Aloha, it's Dave Lawrence, and thank you very much for joining us. This is a special one. This is a guy who's, I'd like to think of him as an extended friend, a cat who I've gotten to work with professionally. It's half of one of music's most successful duos, but really is a solo artist who's done so many things with his life, and it's a pleasure to welcome him back into Honolulu from Hall Oates and from Another Good Road, John Oates. Welcome back.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks, Dave. The road never ends, you know. Whether I'm working with Daryl or I'm doing something on my own, it just seems to be a continuing theme in my life, so
congrats with Another Good Road. It's a special live project, and I like the smile on your face on it. You always have this, it tells a story in itself, but I know there must be some good tales, some memories of putting that together.
Well, that was a really interesting project. I had done an album called Good Road to Follow, which was a lot of collaborations with some really cool people, a lot of good friends and a lot of new friends who I made along the way. And I was so proud of the music, and once that project was over, I didn't really tour behind it, but I wanted to capture the music somehow or another. So I thought, well, let me do a TV, let me do a video, kind of a long-form video. And it turned into a little bit of a mini documentary. I did a bunch of the songs from that project, plus some new songs that had never been recorded. And did it all in one day, one camera, 15-hour day with an amazing band and singers. And it was pretty intense. We started at 11 o'clock in the morning, finished about 1 in the morning, and we did it all live. I mean, what you see on that video is completely real. We didn't fix anything. All we did was mix it.
And that really is one of those things where people are, how much is something doctored? How much is something actually live? And it sounds like you've realized over the decades of your career that is a sense of authenticity that's important to capture, and live is the way to do it.
Well, I spent my whole life playing live. So at this point now, to me, it's a skill and a talent that, I think a lot of the younger generation has really come to appreciate, because a lot of younger, newer artists don't really spend that time to hone those skills. Now, but I got to be frank. If that video hadn't come out as good as it did, and the band didn't play as well, and I didn't sing very well, I would have fixed it. Trust me, it would have still come out great. But the fact that we were on, everybody was on, everybody brought their A game. It was sometimes, you capture magic, and I really feel like we did on that one. So.
On your website, there is same name as a recent album, The Good Road to Follow. TV has like a promo pilot up there, and I loved the rap about it because it sort of was a cool description of you. It leads into some other questions about your remarkable history, but update on that?
Well, there is no update on the TV idea. It was proposed to me by a producer. I thought it was worth taking a shot with. We did what they call a teaser reel, which is kind of just basically a promo to what it could be like.
What a pilot might be like.
What it might be like, exactly. And right now it's really on hold because I've got so much going on with Daryl. There's so many shows. We're touring internationally. There's a lot of demands on my time, so I've really had to prioritize. And I think right now I'm putting that idea on the back burner. I'm going to finish out this year and into 2016 with Daryl because, as I said, there's a lot of really good things happening. So I just want to see that through, and then we'll see where we are after that, and we'll go from there.
Is that the key to having a successful life, trying a lot of different projects, and you get a sense at some point, all right, this isn't what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to something else, and being resilient, having the tenacity to accept and move? I mean, what is it that, because I look at you and I'm like, he has so many things going on. You're like a juggler, and I see all these balls in the air, and I look at your picture on the website, so many different pictures, and it's this, you just look so serious in all of them, and I'm thinking, how does he stay successful in doing this for so many decades? Is it an agent? What brings this stuff into your life?
I have no idea. I'm my own man when it comes to my solo stuff. I basically manage myself, have a booking agent, and of course, Hall Oates, we have a great manager who handles the real complex side of the big machine. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to what I do on my own, I really like to just do it myself. If it feels right, if it feels natural, and it's fun, I'll do it. It's as simple as that. And I enjoy working. I love working. I like being busy. So that's not a chore for me. That's not, I just look for really cool opportunities and for people who are interesting and stimulating to work with. And if they are, I'll go for it. And I think the biggest misconception that people perhaps don't understand about being successful is that what you lose is time. You lose time. You can lose time with your family. You can lose personal time. Time just seems to slip away. And it's a good thing to be busy, and it's a good thing to be focused on other things. But sometimes you have to regroup. And I think now's a time for me. I'm starting to realize that I spent the last 5 years working so intensely. I think I'm going to back off a little bit, work with Daryl because it's a lot of fun. It's really clicking. We got this incredible Hall Oates machine going, and I think I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to carve out some personal time for myself, I think.
I wonder, as a lot of artists get into college and then their band happens and they never get to finish school. And as I listen to you talk with this really sensible kind of grounded approach, I wonder if being a college grad has something to do with the fact that it certainly can help you through the rest of this adventure you've been on.
I'm sure Temple University would like for me to say that. I don't know if I can say that or not. I think I come from, my parents were very grounded. I have a younger sister who's very successful TV producer. My parents just were real, lower middle class parents who worked really hard and had good ethics, ethnic background, Italian and English, and just kind of brought me up, I think, in a good way. And I try to follow that with my own family, with my son and my wife.
And you can see that was really your mother and your father. It was really interesting because I was thinking, like, the cat that you are must have come from something. And certainly when you think about the music, getting to the first time, you're a little tiny boy, and because we've all been treated to your skills since then, but someone had to make the first discovery. Someone said, wow, look at John. Can you believe what he's doing with that thing? Or
it was my mom. No, there's no doubt about that. She was a bit of a stage mom, and I owe her a lot for that. She pushed me, but then again, she didn't have to push me too hard because I wanted to do it.
You were a ham?
I wasn't a ham, but I sang naturally, and of course, once I got my hands on a guitar, there was no one ever had to tell me to practice. So it was one of those things where it was pretty, all she did was grease the wheels, and I, kind of we started rolling from there. But I just, it was one of those things where I just seemed to have a talent for it at a very early age, and my mom was, there to support me.
How did it begin? She gets you an instrument, you start singing. If you can, tell us a first story or how you remember it.
Well, I'll segue this into some more self-promotion. I'm writing a book. So in the course of writing a book, you'll read this entire story. You'll find out the whole thing because a lot of it has to do with my early childhood and everything. I sang when I was a little baby. The moment I could talk, I started singing, whether it was nursery rhymes or whatever. And there's a recording of me singing Here Comes Peter Cottontail when I was 4 years old that they recorded at Coney Island Amusement Park in New York City. And from there, I just sang. And so my mom gave me voice lessons. And when I was 6, I started taking guitar lessons. And I'm left-handed, but I went to this little mom and pop music store in a little town in Pennsylvania where I grew up. And the woman who was teaching didn't want to deal with a left-handed guitar player. So she just said, oh, he'll be okay. Just make him play normally. And my mom, of course, not knowing any better, said, oh, I guess that's okay. And I was 6, so what did I know? And so I play guitar right-handed, but I'm left-handed. So I don't know what that means, whether I'm mixed up or screwed up, but it worked out pretty well so far. I always wonder if I would have been a better guitar player had I played left-handed. That's something that's always been in the back of my mind, but of course that's too late now to reverse that.
It was Bill Haley, right? That was the first...
Yeah, I saw Bill Haley when I was 4 or 5 years old. We had just moved from New York to Pennsylvania. My dad had gotten relocated. His job was relocated from New York City to this little tiny town in Pennsylvania. And there was a little amusement park called Willow Grove Amusement Park, and took me to the amusement park, and in the band shell, Bill Haley and the Comets were playing. Bill Haley was, of course, from Camden, New Jersey, which was literally across the river from the amusement park. So for him, it was kind of a local gig. And I remember I was a little kid. I ran right down to the front of the stage, and, there was not a lot of people there. It was probably a few hundred people at the amusement park, and, small-time Pennsylvania country thing. And I watched him play Rock Around the Clock, and I thought it was the most amazing thing I ever seen, and I never forgot it.
That was so young. When you get a little older, you're a teenager, I guess you're going out with the dudes, the chicks, whatever it is. What were those memories like? Because clearly that had to be equally forming in the cat you are today.
Well, I worked, I was in a band from 6th grade straight through for the rest of my life. I never had a job. other than music. The closest thing I've had to a job is teaching music lessons. So, guitar lessons, which I don't consider much of a job. Not to denigrate guitar teachers, because they're great, but I just it was one of those things. The way I look at it, as long as people kept clapping and reinforcing what I was doing, I kept doing it. No one ever said, "Hey, man, you ought to consider another occupation. You really suck." If they would have, maybe I would have. I don't know, but no, that never happened. So here I am.
We were talking about posts on your website earlier, both in the interview and before it actually too, and there's a little biographical detail. It fits right into where we're talking about in your life too, and it's like it's a little snapshot, and it sounds so cool. It's you and Daryl cruising around in a GTO, a '68 GTO, I believe, and if you can, just because, I mean, for many people listening, they probably feel like, "Ooh, I'd like to have maybe been in that." Initiate, if you can, that first meeting, and then some of the tales from those sorts of road trips.
Well, here again, you got to read the book.
I'm gonna, and then it's 2016. And I had it in there, John. I promise. I had notes for it.
All these type of stories. There's going to be a lot of these stories, and it's not the Hall Oates story. It's a different kind of book. It's about personal realizations and things like that. I don't want to go too deep into it, but Daryl and I were scrounging around. We scrounged up enough money by 1973 or 74 to buy my parents' old Pontiac GTO, '68 GTO. It was yellow with a black vinyl top. And we put the whole band in it. 2 guys in the front, 3 in the back, and whoever drew the short straw got to sit on the hump in the back. And we drove from Florida to Maine and to Chicago and Detroit and Ohio, and you name it, up and down the East Coast in that car, and we did gigs. We had a van that followed us with 2 guys who had our equipment, and that's the way we toured in 1973, 1974. It was crazy.
Vehicle almost sounds like the Dirty Mary Crazy Larry car at the end that Peter Fonda slams into the side of the train. I think that was a Barracuda.
I wish I had that '68 GTO right now. But it was awesome. I mean, I actually tricked my parents into buying that car back in '68 because they wanted a new car, and I was a car nut, and I knew that the difference between a Pontiac Tempest and a Pontiac GTO was just a giant engine. And I just said, "Oh, Mom, you just get the GTO. It's a lot cooler, It's not that much more money, and it's the same as the Tempest," because they wanted just a normal mid-sized family car. So I'm really glad I convinced them to get that GTO.
Has that ever been a passion once, you've had a lot of time now to appreciate? Thankfully, you've been successful. You're a very appreciative guy. Has muscle cars or other kinds of vehicles become a passion?
Well, yeah, back in the 80s, I had an amazing car collection. I collected a lot of sports cars. I had all sorts of really cool cars. That and a lot of other trappings of my 80s success went away when I got divorced in 1988, as so many things do, which was actually the best thing that ever happened to me, because it gave me a chance to start life new and with a different kind of point of view. But I'm still back into cars. I've got a '72 Alfa Romeo Spider convertible, which is a really cool little sports car, and I got a really cool Audi that I drive around. So that's good enough, though. And I just got a truck, so for Colorado, because that's where I live. I live either in Nashville or Colorado. In Colorado, you got to have a truck. So.
You said a great thing, though. Some of the more meaningful things in life are also part of the way that people can get to know you if they go online or on your website, and some of those are animals. And there's no question that both they can make us laugh and have a lot of fun, but there's a deep connection there too, and there must be a reason. And if you can, walk us through the menagerie and why it may call to you the way it does.
I will. It's a very simple answer. My wife. My wife grew up on a farm in Illinois. Her dad's still a farmer, working farmer, soybeans and corn. She grew up having all these, whatever she wanted. She got these exotic animals, pygmy goats, potbelly pigs, all these weird animals, and she just loved it. And when we got our place in Colorado and we got married, that was one of the things she wanted. She wanted to have chickens and all sorts of things. Here again, it's in the book. So I'm really the reluctant rancher. I'm just kind of the guy who shovels this shit and pays the bills. She does all the cool stuff. And we've got llamas and alpacas and emus, and we've got 2 Bernese mountain dogs, and we've got a terrier, and we've had tons. We have peacocks and turkeys and chickens and all kinds of things over the years. So the animals come and go. We're kind of like a rescue ranch, really. So
Yeah, I saw that name Rescue, and that segues into you have when I do a segment every week called Helping Hand, where I try to put the spotlight on a different nonprofit that helps the most vulnerable people in the community each week, whether they're disabled, homeless, elderly, neglected, who are minors, whomever. And that's in your portfolio of online resources, if you could sum it up that way in this modern era. Canine Companions for Independence stuck out, the Pujols Family Foundation, TJ Martell gigs. These are all benefits that John does. Legacy Music Alliance, Arizona Sonora Desert Museum. Where does this philanthropic side come from?
I just feel like I've been really blessed and I've been really successful, and why not? Everything that I do when it comes to that, I don't consider it work for me. I play music. I'd be sitting here playing the guitar. So if I'm sitting somewhere else playing the guitar and it's to help someone, how can I say no? That's how I look at it. And plus, I get to work like with the Pool Holtz thing that's coming up November 16th in Nashville. Sam Bush asked me. Sam Bush was one of my first really good friends in Nashville when I moved there. And, he's the kind of guy that, if I ever asked him for something, he would reciprocate. And so, of course, when he asked me, I want to do it. And I get to play with Alison Krauss and Emmylou Harris and Rodney Crowell. I mean, come on, who wouldn't want to do that? So, that's how I look at it. To me, it's not work. It's just, it's a way of giving back that is enjoyable and benefits everyone. So
Talked about two things there: really good friends and thinking about music as not being work. And I guess from a mathematical analysis of those phrases, one could say Daryl, and that's a friend, that's a partner. This is an unbelievable relationship. It's something that any person out there they can flash back to when they were young. They know where they were when different songs, it marks their life. It's powerful stuff. It's multi-generational. And thinking of your relationship with them, we talked a little about the GTO, but not about the intimacy of how people maintain something like that, the chemistry.
No one will ever be able to understand the relationship between Daryl and I. It's very unique. Sometimes I can't understand it either. He and I are very, very different in a lot of ways, but we're very, very similar in a lot of ways. So it's kind of the difference allows us to be independent and not get in each other's way. The similarities allow us to continue to work together in a very seamless way. It's really weird, like our manager, for instance. Well, this will give you, I think this sums it up. A lot of times, there'll be a lot of important business decisions or touring decisions or, money decisions or, career decisions that are, pretty important stuff. And, our manager is very good at balancing, out things and working. So, he'll call me and he'll say, "Hey, John, look, we got this offer to go to France, and then they want us to do this, and here's the money, and this is what we do." And I'll give him my answer just off the top of my head. And then he'll laugh and go, I just spoke to Daryl. It's exactly what he said. And it's so weird. That happens all the time. So I don't talk to Daryl about it. It's just we essentially grew up together. We met at 18 years old. We've known each other since 18. That's 50 years. When you know someone for 50 years and you've worked with them, shared the ups and the downs, know each other's families, that becomes more like a brotherhood than it really is. It's not a business partnership in any way. If Daryl and I were only together for business or money, we'd never be together because it just wouldn't work. But we actually it's like having a brother, really. That's the best way to describe it, I guess.
I love that term. And as I was getting ready to do, it was actually a day or two before we talked. I was reading this interview, and it was Rob Halford, singer of Judas Priest. You know who that guy is, right? So he had left the band for about 10 years. And the interesting quote, and I'm asking about this, he says in there something like, in the 10 years I wasn't in Priest, I never once had any communication with any of those guys or the management. But when we got back together, it was like no day had ever passed. Right. So many bands, I had Jack Cassidy, Ewan McCalkin, and Hot Tuna examining their 50-year friendship and relationship in Airplane and Tuna, and then thinking about you cats and those guys I just said. When you're not working, how much communication is there between you guys?
Almost none.
And isn't that interesting how these bands, like Rob Halford said, or like some of these cats...
We don't have to talk about anything. It's almost like a telepathic relationship. It really is. We'll go our set. In fact, after tonight, we have a month off. We'll be off the entire month of November. I will not, more than likely, unless I send Daryl an email or he sends me a text or something about something that we need to discuss, we won't talk to each other, and there's no issue at all. We'll get back together and play at the end of November, and it'll be as though nothing ever happened.
If you ever have something going on in your life, you talked about this brotherhood aspect, and I'm thinking like maybe, something tough, like if I'm going through something, I'm like, I need somebody to talk to, like, hey man, I just want to talk. I like, you make me feel good. You make me feel comfortable when we talk. I appreciate it when you take the time to answer my calls. Do you have that rapport ever with him too, or is it because I know it's beyond, just as you said, it's not a business partnership?
Yeah, I mean, the point is I think if he asked for something, I would be there for it, but I don't go out of my way to insert my opinions about the way he lives his life, and he doesn't do that with me either. I think that's the nature of our relationship. Yeah, we're not nosy about each other. I could care less of what his day-to-day routine is, when he's at home or whatever. But at the same time, I care about it. And if there was something that needed to be, if he wanted my opinion, I would give him my opinion. But we don't butt into each other's lives in that kind of way.
And when you think about the goals that you still have as someone who is like, you have this gig, it's compelling because people want you guys, right? Promoters are constantly calling in offers. There's tours. There's availability to continue to work. And this brand that it's unbelievable how many years it has survived and what it has done for you. But yet, in addition to that paycheck, if you will, that's such an incredible part of your life, you probably still have personal aspirations above and beyond that. Are there people, maybe dreams? I know you've had your dream mate. You met many times by meeting people that are your heroes or helping people in need and getting that satisfaction. What are some aspirations, John, that are still on the table?
Creatively, I have to be honest with you, this last 5 years in Nashville, I fulfilled a lot of my creative aspirations. I carved out a very distinct and very solid solo identity for myself. Made a lot of great friends who I think I will continue to make music with for a long, long time. So in that level, I'm not that driven on the creative side. I think my aspirations now lie more in seeing my son fulfill his destiny, which I think is going to be very interesting and really great. And, staying healthy enough to enjoy all the hard work that I put in.
Are you more spiritual as you go?
I think so. I think I'm more appreciative of, I don't take things for granted. I realize that there's a higher power that's looking over me somehow or another, and I've been very, very fortunate, health-wise and with the people around me, and that's something I don't take for granted. I believe there's something out there greater than all of us, and I don't know what that is, but I guess one of these days I'm going to find out.
Well, you look like you take great care of yourself. I'll leave it on a funny note. The pictures of you, the jam session with the president, his wife. I mean, is that your first president, and how did that one come about?
Well, I've met a few presidents before, believe it or not.
I do believe it.
I've never been to the White House. So, actually, the greatest thing, he was very cool, and it was actually Michelle Obama's request that we play, and I think he just said sure, But then he looked like he was really into it. His staff said that they've never asked for an encore. They told us specifically that we should not do an encore. We should do 7 songs and be done. And we did our 7 songs. He asked for an encore. We did an encore. Then he asked for another encore. And they said they had never seen him do that, regardless of who was there, which I guess was a big compliment. But the best part about the whole night was that my son got to become an intern in Congress through doing that show. He came with us through that show. He met some people and began to talk about his interest in politics. And he's now in Washington, D.C. working in Congress.
How old is he?
19.
Aspirations he has are political?
To rule the world, basically.
Well, hopefully that'll be good for us.
I would vote for him, let's put it that way.
It's always great catching up with you, and hope you keep us in mind in the future. You're always generous with your time. Hope this was a fun conversation, John.
It's always good, man. Thanks, Dave.
It's John Oates.